session 6 of the Next Step series, and we'll be covering preparing for the interview today. My name is Esther. I'm a career advisor here, and that's my coworker Andrew Mayer, who is the Director of Career Development. Some logistics before we begin. We meet weekly on Fridays from 12 to 1 p.m. Central Time virtually. Presentation is the first half hour and then a Q&A for the last half hour. All our recordings will be posted. They are posted on our website and also on YouTube. If you want to go back and watch any of them that you might have missed, or if you want to review any of them as well. This week we are going over preparing for the interview. Next week, there are virtual mock interviews. You should have signed up for them already by October 23rd. And then our last session covers negotiating salary and accepting the offer. So for our agenda, we're going to look at what to do before an interview to kind of help you better prepare, what to do during an interview to help you make a great impression, and then what to do after the interview to help you stand out. So you landed the interview, you've worked hard, you submitted a great resume, awesome cover letter, it's well written, and now you have the interview. So what's next? This is a great chance for you to market yourself. Think about what makes you stand out, what your professional brand is. We've discussed this previously. And also it's a great time for you to tell them why you would be a great addition to their team. There are many different types of interviews. You might be receiving a phone interview, an in-person interview, in today's world, probably a virtual interview, and then maybe even potentially a group or panel interview where there's multiple people from the company that are there to interview you and get to know you. The process looks different depending on the industry you're going into and the company itself. For the most part, you'll get a screening interview where they ask you basic questions about who you are. This can be done through phone, through Zoom, or in person. And if you do a great job, you may be brought in for a second interview, where they might bring in a hiring manager or someone else on the team to get to know you as well. Some companies might even do an all-day or out-of-town interview, where they bring you onto the location. You get to see the physical space. You get to meet people from the company, have meals together, and so on. It just depends on the company you are applying to and also the industry. According to Indeed, here are the top 10 reasons why some people do not get offers. They range anywhere from you might be showing a lack of passion in your interview, or you're undervaluing your talents, you're underqualified, you lack confidence. And let's be honest, when we go into an interview, we're nervous. We might forget what to say, we might forget important things to mention during an interview. This is why practicing is so important. One important thing I do want to point out, and we'll talk about later on, is number 5, you didn't research the company. You want to show them why they're interested, so just get to know kind of who they are. Tell them why you want to work for that specific company. A lot of times, as we're looking through this, the main thing is preparation. So here are some tips for before the interview. Make sure you know the logistics of the interview itself. Where are you going for it? What's the building? What office? What's the address? What's the parking situation like? Will there be traffic during the time when you need to go there? I would say from previous experience, when I first applied here at Concordia, I was given a specific map with the building that I needed to go to, the person I had to speak to get to the right room. Thankfully, it was during a winter break, so the students were gone, so parking was pretty easy. But if it was any other day on a school day, I would have been a little more stressed out trying to find parking. And then consider traffic. Why if you're trying to meet and it's during a rush hour time? Think about how much you have to plan previously. If it's virtual, think about what format you might have to use. Was there a Zoom link sent out to you previously? Do you need a password for it? Do you have it? Just things to think about. When you think about what to bring, even if it's virtual or in person, have a pencil and paper next to you. You can take notes and write down things that you might want to mention again to an employer. If you're in person, bring a portfolio. I have a picture of that on the right. It's just a fancier folder to keep all your documents and papers. And then bring copies of your resume as well. They might already have it, but it's nice to have extras. So as you're preparing for that virtual interview, if it is confirmed as virtual, here are 7 tips for you. First, check your technology. Like mentioned before, check your internet quality. Make sure it's the right connection. It's a great connection. I know there are certain spaces in Concordia that have better connections than others, so just be sure you know. Make sure you have the right equipment for it. Check your camera to see if the quality is great. Check your sound and your microphone. Make sure you have the right software downloaded, whether that's Google Meets or Zoom. And then make sure your computer is updated. The last thing that you want is to log on to your computer for the interview and it has you update and restart. The next is keep it professional. First impressions do matter. So whether it's online or in person, you want to dress up for the interview. Make sure you're not wearing any loud jewelry or makeup. Your hair is pulled back and neat. And then just keep in mind what kind of email or username you're using. Make sure it's professional. And make sure you prepare in advance like you would for any interview. Practice your questions. Feel free to practice with a friend. Send them a Zoom link and practice virtually. That way you can also test out your sound and your screen quality as well. And make sure you limit distractions. So during your interview, let any family or roommates or friends know that you have an interview. So then it's quiet. Also look at your surroundings. Is your background messy? Is it distracting? I know I did an interview once with someone and I could see a lot of just like dirty clothes, or maybe they weren't dirty, but messy clothes in the back that were like half hung on a hanger. So just check your surroundings and then just be confident. You prepared for this, you practiced this. Always just don't forget about your nonverbals while you're online either. And then just always send a follow up within 24 hours. Send a thank you email to everyone who interviewed you. And we'll talk more about that later too. And then just thank the interviewers for their time. Let them know how they can reach out to you for further questions. And if you don't know their emails, feel free to ask their HR rep for their emails or look back at previous emails as well. For attire, you want to keep it business professional. Obviously, you want to do your research, you want to match the company kind of culture and their vibe. But at the same time, I'd rather have you dress up than not. So business professional, blue, navy blue, or gray blazers are great. Make sure you're polished and comfortable. You're wearing practical shoes if you are walking around a lot. Keep a simple hairstyle. For women, closed-toed shoes and heels. Conservative makeup and jewelry, nothing too distracting. For men, clean shaven, simple ties. Just do not wear jeans or hats or sweats to an interview. So as I dive into answering questions, we're going to review the job description, research the organization, talk about the STAR technique again, and then practice answering questions. So you want to first review the job description, look at what skills, knowledge, or experiences that they are seeking. It's usually written out in the job description itself. So think about what you've done in the past that relates to the job description and let that kind of guide you as you're practicing answering questions, as you're thinking of stories to share, and so on. So for example, the job posting on Handshake, our Java internship board as a digital marketing coordinator at DAP Products. So looking at the position responsibilities, you want to make sure it talks about how they're looking for someone who can stay current on all social media trends and best practices to better engage users. Maybe in the past, you've done this at an on-campus organization, you ran their social media accounts, and you read up on what's the best practices to engage people, and you learned, wow, posting at noon and posting at 3 p.m. is when people are most active. Tell them that you've done research before. It shows that you're learning about the field, you're keeping up to date, and you're able to find the best tactics to reach your audience. 9 and 10 talk about ensuring timely and effective execution of social media tactics and programs, and then also using a management tool to schedule outposts. Maybe you've done this before with Hootsuite, which is a program you can use to schedule out multiple social media posts. Talk about that. Think about how you can use the job responsibilities that are listed to kind of guide and help you think of stories, what you've done in the past, in past jobs, past volunteer positions to bring up in an interview. Next, you want to make sure you've researched the organization that you are applying to. Having little to no knowledge of the company is the most common mistake that is made during interviews. So it's super simple. Start with the employer's website. Look at their mission, their goals, the products they're selling, the different services, their history, culture, and so on. Bring it up during an interview. Mention kind of why you want to work there and what you learned. You might also be asked this as well. You also want to look up relevant news articles or even just keep up to date with the industry you're entering to show that you're someone that wants to continuously grow. You want to bring new things to the organization. You want to kind of help them keep up to date with the trends. So for example, let's look at this job posting from Habitat for Humanity for a Habitat AmeriCorps member. So let's say after reading the job description, you think that you are qualified for it, you have experiences in the past that relate to what they're seeking. Let's dive deeper into the organization itself. So for this, if you go on their website, it there's a page for where it lists their mission, their vision, their principles, and kind of who they are. And as you can read, their mission says seeking to put God, love into action. They bring people together to build homes, communities, and hope. Let's say one of your biggest values is God, is faith. You can mention that in your interview about how that's you're seeking a place where you're able to put your value at the very top, and that is what the organization does as well. As you're reading their principles, they want to advocate for affordable housing. Let's say, for example, I'll talk about my own personal life. Um, I can talk about how I grew up in a struggling household. Not having housing is that's affordable is literally impacts so many different aspects of my life. And through experience, you want to be able to break down that barrier so people can kind of grow in strength without having housing be a setback for them. Simple story of my past as to why I wanted to work at at an organization that also helps other people advocate for affordable housing. Pretty simple connection. And so that's something you can look at as you are diving into the organization, learning more about it, and then you can bring it up during an interview. They might also ask you the question, why do you want to work here? And that's a great way for you to bring up, oh, I saw on your website, your mission says this, you value this, and I also agree with it. So things to think about as you're preparing for the interview. So here are some common types of questions, of interview questions. You might either get screening questions, which just ask you more about who you are. So these questions can include tell me about yourself, where are you applying for the position, what do you know about the role already, why do you want to work at this company, what motivates you, what's your greatest weakness or strength. Or they might ask you behavior-based questions. With these questions, they might require you to share an experience or a story to kind of show them more of who you are and your skills and strengths that you have to offer. So talk about a time where you had to work closely with someone who didn't agree with you. Give me an example of a time when you faced a conflict while working on a team. How did you handle it? Tell me about your proudest professional accomplishment. So as you're going through and practicing, answer both screening questions and also behavior-based questions. So as you're preparing and practicing on how to answer these questions, here are some tips to keep in mind. So stay positive even if the question is about conflict. Like mentioned before, the previous question of what's something a problem you faced at work, how did you handle it? Keep it positive, mention what you learned from it, how you grew from it, and so on. It's okay to ask an interviewer to repeat a question. If a question has multiple components, you can feel free to ask that I answer all the parts of the question, have them repeat certain parts. Obviously, use examples that are relevant to the position or field that you are entering. And then if you're asking a legal question, such as, are you married? You don't have to answer it. You can feel free to respond with, I'm not comfortable with answering that. We talked about the STAR technique a few times before, but I do want to talk about it again. So the STAR technique is a great way for you to explain a situation or experience in full context. So it stands for situation, task, action, and result. So you want to provide context for the situation, the where and when. For the task, you want to tell them what you were tasked with. Action, what did you do? And then most importantly, the results, if you can, quantify it. So for example, the situation I was asked to plan a company lunch at work. The task is you're responsible for managing details, finding a location, ordering food, managing RSVPs. The action that was done was you create a Google form to collect details, create a spreadsheet to track prices and orders, and the result was the lunch was a great success, and you're asked to plan it once a month after that. So just a great way for you to go through and see how you can clearly explain a situation. Like I mentioned before, even if it wasn't a great result, talk about what you learned from it, what you would do differently, and so on. So these next 3 slides are just a few common questions that you can practice, whether it's you're doing it while I'm talking right now, or you're doing it after this presentation with a friend, with a roommate, with a family member. So the first common question that is asked in an interview is, tell me about yourself. You want to give a 30 to 60 introduction as to who you are. You can mention your past experiences or current experiences as it relates to the position. You can mention education as it relates to the position. So any research or projects you've done or you are doing, and then mention why you're interested in the position itself. So for example, I could say, my name is Esther. I'm a senior at Concordia St. Paul, majoring in marketing. I'll be graduating this December. I'm currently working as a marketing intern at a local company called Inform Creations, serving as a communications intern. I also serve as the president of the art club on campus at Concordia St. Paul. I'm excited to grow more in the marketing field in a large company, and the position you have open as a marketing communication specialist seems like a great opportunity. Pretty simple, to the point. It explains what your past experiences are and then also what you're seeking from them. So another common question you might be asked is, what is your greatest strength? So think about a strength that relates to the job position. Think about how you could explain it. Use a STAR technique. Make sure you mention the situation, the task, the action, and then the result. So for example, you could say something like, one of my biggest strengths is the ability to resolve conflict, whether that's with myself and a coworker or between coworkers. I found different techniques to find the best solution. For example, when I worked at a restaurant, there was miscommunication between two coworkers, which led to a lot of fighting on the job. I brought up the conflict, addressed the issue, and had my boss supervise the conversation as I was addressing it between them. As a result, they were able to find better ways to address one another without miscommunication. To list the situation, the task was I had to figure out how to help with the conflict. The action was I brought them together, had my boss supervise as well. The result was they were able to communicate better after this conversation. One question you might be asked at the end is, why do you want to work here? So this is where you can use what you learned when you research the company and organization to answer the question. So for example, you could say, I want to work at insert company name because on your website, you share the importance of diversity and inclusion, and you show that through action, through hosting numerous workshops and trainings of education over the topic. I want to be at a place that values people and ensures that throughout all levels throughout the company, whether someone is an intern or a CEO. This is using what you learned as to what you also find important, which is diversity and inclusion. Whether someone is a CEO or an intern, they're able to attend these workshops and learn more about how to be more inclusive. So this is a great way to just practice, think about what you learn, think about what you're seeking, what your values are as well, and mention that here. So moving on to questions on salary, you should not be the one to bring up salary, but you should be ready to answer it and talk about it. One thing you should do prior to the interview is research the salary range for the position that you're entering that you want and desire. Go on Glassdoor. It's a great website to look at typical salary ranges in the position that you are in or a similar position as well. I do want to recommend you take into consider kind of your location, because some jobs just have a higher minimum wage or there's higher cost of living in a specific place and so on. You want to make sure you also know your budget. So look at what you need to pay for rent, for any student loans or bills. How much do you have to make monthly in order to meet those needs? If you are told a dollar amount, ask to see the benefits package. Does that play a role? That might play a role into what you decide on what job to pick. If you're asked to provide a dollar amount, state a range with justification from your previous research that you've done. Like mentioned before, we will be doing our last session over negotiating salary. So tune in for that and register on Handshake if you haven't already for that session. So now you are entering during the interview. Here are some tips for you as you are interviewing. You want to arrive 30 minutes early. Don't check in until 10 minutes before. Use the extra time to review the job description, check your attire, review interview stories, and relax. Practice, you got this. Do note that your interview begins once you walk into the building. Think about who you're greeting at the desk. Think about who you might see in the hallways. They might ask them, hey, like, how was Esther when she walked in? Was she nice? Was she talkative? What was she like? As you're answering questions, be you, be authentic, and be confident. You've practiced, you know what the job details are, you have stories to tell the employers, you know why you'd be a great addition to their team. Also, like mentioned previously, be aware of any legal questions. There are some in the US that you can choose to not respond, such as what's your religious affiliation? Are you pregnant? What's your political affiliation? What's your race, color, or ethnicity? So you can choose to not respond to these questions. And then at the end of your interview, always have 3 to 5 questions ready to go for those who are interviewing you. These can be next step questions. So, for example, it can be anywhere, anything from what does a typical day look like for me? What are the biggest challenges that someone in this position has faced previously? What's the company culture like? Or what are the next steps? What's the timeline? So, after interview, here are some next steps to take. First off, you want to send a thank you email. In today's context and virtual world, sending a thank you email is great. Send it within 24 hours to everyone that interviewed you. And then you also want to take time to evaluate the offer. Take some notes down after your interview, write down what you liked about it, look at the salary, the benefits, the company culture. How did you feel about the interview? How did you feel about the people you met in the interview? About the organization itself when they described it to you. So here's an example of just a thank you email. Subject line, thank you, insert name, or thank you for your time. You want to say like your name, hello to a specific person. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me for the position at the company. Talk about what you learned. Feel free to elaborate more on anything that you want to mention again to tell them why you'd be a good asset to their team. You can reiterate that you can be contacted for any further questions. And just once again, thank them again for their time. So next week we have our virtual mock interviews. You should have registered already for that if you're interested. So those people have already should have received information about that. And then our last session is covering negotiating salary and accepting the offer. If you have any questions, like always, feel free to stop by our office in Polar 124 or email us at careerdevelopment@csb.edu, or feel free to call and schedule an appointment with us. Thank you.